His contemporaries said of him, Leonardo da Vinci is a prodigious genius, possessed of a divine and marvelous intellect. Leonardo was born in 1452, when his father was quite young. Christopher Columbus would discover a new world of geography, while young Leonardo was discovering a new world of science and art. He was one of 15 children by 4 wives. His birthplace was a 3-room stone farmhouse in the village of Vinci, surrounded by olive trees and vineyards. The fact that he was born illegitimately may be the reason for his lack of formal education. But lack of education, lack of proper social credentials, or even wealth is rarely an impediment to the volcanic power of will and intellect. He was self-educated, even teaching himself Latin at the age of 40. He was left-handed and taught himself to be ambidextrous, or to paint with either hand. He taught himself to write backwards, from right to left, as if in a mirror, for the sheer bravado of the discipline. He was tall and handsome, fair-haired and lean, and he wore an ironic smile at all times. He painted with such imagination that it is said he originated modern art. He invented war machines, cannons, siege machines, and devices to lift water, and also the first concept of the helicopter and the parachute. His brain was a cornucopia of imagination, intellect, and invention. Today, there is a consensus of agreement that yes, Leonardo da Vinci was a prodigious genius, possessed of a divine and marvelous intellect. It is difficult to assess so many qualities and talents housed in one mind. In the 1460s, when he was about 14, he left his little village and moved 28 miles south to the rich and famous capital of Florence. In Florence, he joined the brilliant men of the Renaissance. What an impression the city must have made on this boy who is only 3 years younger than Lorenzo de' Medici, the dynamic patron of the arts who is to rule this dynamic city. Until the latter part of the 19th century, little was known of this extraordinary artist. All that was certain were his notebooks and some sketches and very few paintings. He apprenticed in the studio of Andrea Verrocchio, the master painter, sculptor, goldsmith, and fresco artist. Commissions rushed into the workshop. Verrocchio never turned down a commission. Frequently, the commission was worked on by several apprentices, including Da Vinci. Only by careful detective work have we pieced together what are Da Vinci's, and in some cases, what are parts of a painting of the work of someone else. The earliest work of Leonardo is dated August 5th, 1473, when he was 21. It is a study of a landscape. He was still associated with Verrocchio's workshop where he apprenticed. It is in burnt wood ink on paper, and unquestionably, it is his work in its entirety. This was made while young Leonardo was an apprentice in Verrocchio's studio, which was the most famous in Florence. The relationship lasted for 10 years. This drawing depicts a landscape bursting with movement of light, foliage, and water. It may be as seen near his village of Vinci, because he never lost his love of the workings of nature's demons, such as floods, storms, tidal waves, and volcanoes. Since Verrocchio never turned down a commission, his workshop was a steady bath of competition and gossip of the city. Leonardo was a countryman, and always eager to remove himself from the crowd and replenish his outlook through nature. Much of Leonardo's early work at Verrocchio's studio is lost. However, Leonardo's hand seems to be clear in Tobias and the Angel, a painting in tempera on wood ascribed to Verrocchio's school. But Leonardo's love of nature, the happy little dog trotting at the angel's feet, and the fish which Tobias carries, are all clues as to the identity of the painter. Moreover, the angel has wings aerodynamically correct enough to carry the weight of the angel through the air. Leonardo was fascinated with the science as well as the art of flight. He drew birds' wings correctly and extrapolated the weight ratios of bird to man, then adjusted the size of the angel's wings accordingly. The Annunciation. This is Leonardo's first certifiable surviving painting. It is oil on a wood panel painted with tempera, which is a mixture of water, egg yolk, and pigment. It is what most painters traditionally used. However, the Flemish introduced the mixing of oil with the pigments which Leonardo preferred. Originally, the Annunciation was credited to Verrocchio's school, but in the 19th century, John Ruskin, the art critic, firmly declared it to be the work of Leonardo. A pen and ink sketch of the angel's sleeve turned up in the library at Oxford University and in the Royal Collection at Windsor, a study of the lily held by the angel that authenticated its identity. The unusually large lectern, probably a stage prop in the studio, does not fit the scale of the painting. Unfortunately, it looks like a student's work. It causes the Virgin's right hand to assume a position that would not occur naturally. The trouble is that it looks as if the mathematics of perspective have not been followed. But the fact is, the rules have been followed without regard to a harmonious composition. Clearly, a beginner's mistake. But as Stephen Sondheim would later sing, it's all about putting it together, bit by bit, piece by piece. Then recent examinations of this painting reveal that the artist used his fingers to manipulate the slow-drying oil paint rather than the brush. Perhaps another examination may reveal Da Vinci's actual fingerprint left in the drying oil paint. The angel has landed. The flowers are blown flat by the downdraft of those powerful wings that actually could lift the angel into flight instead of serving as mere decoration. The flowers in the foreground flutter with the breeze which the angel has caused, startling the Virgin. The density of air currents, light and shadow so subtle as to be barely perceptible. Also, notice his use of chiaroscuro, which is the play of light and shadows. He advised painters to see that among the shadows, there are other shadows. The only Da Vinci in the United States is in the National Gallery in Washington, D.C., and in the great American tradition, we paid for our Da Vinci dearly. So when you go to Washington, and you will, visit this beautiful portrait and be prepared to fall hopelessly head over tin cups in love. It is the incomparable portrait of a young lady, Ginevra da Vinci. Only recently have infrared cameras identified the family crest on the back of the painting and confirmed the sitter's identity beyond all doubt. Leonardo, with his scientific bent, would have approved heartily of this modern forensic investigation. Ginevra was the daughter of a banker, and her beauty was celebrated by the many poets of the Quattrocento Florence. Leonardo paints a juniper tree in the background as a pun on her name, Ginevra. The little blue juniper berries are used to flavor gin. Ginevra. The portrait is so lifelike that contemporaries have said it appeared not to be a portrait, but the model in person. Her smooth skin and hair contrast with the spiky juniper foliage and with a distant scene to form a sequence of tonal events that is unprecedented in Florentine art. 500 years later, with no other evidence than this portrait, we feel we almost know this beauty. However, when one realizes this portrait was to commemorate her marriage at 16 to a man over twice her age, she does not look very pleased at the prospect. As a matter of fact, knowing this, we can almost say that she is seething to shout, "Father, I deserve better than this." Under this impressive beauty, there is high drama in this painting. Meanwhile, the Medici, at this time, were not the official rulers of Florence, but they held sway to a powerful degree. They controlled the Signoria, the council, and they were popular. Lorenzo the Magnificent here is not the work of Da Vinci. It is ascribed to the Italian school, but it captures the brute force of Lorenzo's personality and also the feeling of duplicity which inspired Niccolò Machiavelli's book, The Prince. Read it and taste the tart irony of this acerbic fellow who has had such influence on politics of every age since. Pope Sixtus was the head of the rival Pazzi family. He had all the vices linked to the Renaissance popes, and he was a bitter enemy of the Medici clan. He hatched out the Pazzi plot and planned to murder Lorenzo and his younger brother, Giuliano. Jacopo de Pazzi was selected to kill them. But alas, the plot failed, and one conspirator fled all the way to Constantinople. But only briefly, for the long tentacles of the Medici vengeance sought him out. The Ottomans returned him to their business partners, the Medici, where the unfortunate wretch was executed in the town square. This is the political maelstrom which swirled around Da Vinci as he worked. As we have seen, intrigue and warfare between city-states in Italy was constantly going on. Leonardo offered his services as a munitions inventor to Lodovico Sforza, the Duke of Milan. Leonardo da Vinci had a mind of such inventiveness that even when he delved into pure science, he made it into an art. Here is a sketch in a later model of Da Vinci's screw. It is the remote ancestor of the helicopter. The blade is made of starched linen, and he thought if it turned rapidly enough, it would achieve liftoff. This illustration is in one of his notebooks, written backwards to be read with a mirror. Bill Gates, the founder of Microsoft, recently bought the Da Vinci notebooks so that the world would have access to them. He also invented a water dredger, mounted on twin pontoons and a water wheel to lift water, as shown here in a later model. These and many more wonderful inventions, such as a parachute, siege engines for battering walls and hurling missiles, were all meticulously noted down in his records. Often, on the same page were brilliant works of art in ink on paper, next to his drawings of his engines of war. His mind was a cornucopia of imagination. He was the quintessential Renaissance man of the Quattrocento. In Leonardo's The Virgin of the Rocks, he uses his favorite composition, the triangle. Here, Mary, the angel, and the child form an isosceles triangle of color in a rock cave to heighten the effect of light and darkness. His knowledge of optics is at work here to create a great open space. Once again, notice that never man of gauze-like light in the background to signify the spirit. Notice the face of the angel with the arresting hair. It is that sweet, puzzling beauty of the Mona Lisa, which he uses again and again. Beauty that is almost painful. The Duke Lodovico asked Leonardo to paint the Last Supper to honor his deceased wife at the convent of Santa Maria del Grazie. This painting is one of the major icons of our civilization. It is as much a legend as it is a painting, even in its ruined condition. Da Vinci did not want to use the traditional fresco, which is painting directly into wet plaster, because it had to be done quickly before the plaster dried. He invented an oil and tempera, or oil and water combination. This proved to be disastrous. The painting never fully dried and has since become hopelessly spotted. Nevertheless, ruined or not, it is one of the seminal paintings of all time. The Last Supper is a triangle composition of 4 groups of 3 people, with Christ in the center. All lines of perspective go directly to the right eye of Christ. The moment is not the usual breaking of the bread. It is the moment that he announces, "One among you shall betray me." The room explodes in animated shock. Christ alone remains serene. Behind him is that gauzy light so frequently used. The gestures are as vivid as speech. Da Vinci is quoted as saying, "The artist should notice the sudden gestures which people make without thinking when moved by strong sentiment." It's a pity that the Last Supper was painted in Milan, away from the other great contemporaries such as Michelangelo and Raphael, who could have perhaps studied it and let its influence seep into them. Not long afterward, Da Vinci left Milan and wandered from city to city until he wound up again in Florence. It was in Florence he painted a work of surpassing beauty and strangeness that has held the interest of the world for over 500 years. It is the Mona Lisa. Great beauty must have some strangeness in it, and the Mona Lisa certainly has beauty and strangeness in abundance, and both are deliberate. The landscape of the two sides of the picture do not match up. Viewer's left is higher than viewer's right. The eyes are not the same. Notice the corner of the lips on one side curls and the other side does not. So subtle are these asymmetrical parts that they present the viewer with a mystery. The Mona Lisa has an inner secret that we cannot unravel. She stares with an inner life that we have never seen before in a painting, ancient or modern. It is as if she were just asked a question and is thinking whether to tell us the truth or spare our feelings and tell us a story. One writer said, "Looking at her neck, you could swear that her pulse was beating." Mona Lisa is the most famous painting in the world. Leonardo planned to write a book on anatomy, which did not materialize. He may have been the first artist to undertake dissection. During his life, he dissected about 30 bodies, young and old, male and female. He did most of his scientific research at the Hospital of Santa Maria Nuova in Florence. After all, any artist who depicts the human figure must know anatomy. Here are pen and ink drawings in minute and accurate detail of the muscles and tendons in the human arm, and another in infinite detail of neck and shoulders, another of the heart muscle and blood vessels, and an anatomical study of the human female. Not since the ancient Greek physician Galen was there such accurate knowledge of the human anatomy illustrated and explained. Then, with this knowledge of the body's machinery, he drew the figure in naked flesh. Then he drew the same figure clothed. His subjects have such remarkable actuality because he knew intimately the many layers of information it took to create them. Look at this study of a hand. Every curve and line of it is intimately felt, as if we had X-ray vision to see how the anatomy works beneath the outer flesh. And the ancient Roman architect, Vitruvius, stated the proportions of the human body as it related to a circle and a square. Da Vinci illustrated what Vitruvius said. The subtext is that man is the center of an orderly, geometrical universe. In other words, here is Renaissance man. His very proportions are offered in proof of his ability to reason and solve any problem in the world. In other words, here is man, the pinnacle of nature's creations, the universal problem solver. Never did any one man explore the human being as Leonardo da Vinci, from his anatomy to his proportions, to his inventiveness, and to his surpassing artistic ability.